The distant wail of a steam locomotive shattered the dawn silence as Catherine James stood frozen at the edge of the dusty street, her heart pounding like a stampede against her ribs. The letter from her deceased father's lawyer crumpled in her trembling hand, its message clear and terrifying. To claim her inheritance, the only means to save her mother from destitution, she would need to travel west to Monticello, Utah, a journey that would inevitably require what she feared most in the world: horses. It was May 1878, 3 years since Catherine's near-fatal fall from the back of her family's prized stallion. 3 years since she'd felt the sickening sensation of weightlessness, the horrifying crack of her bones against the unforgiving ground. 3 years since she'd sworn never to mount another horse as long as she lived. "Last call for westbound passengers," shouted the station master, his voice cutting through Catherine's memories. She swallowed hard, adjusted her modest traveling dress, and picked up her carpetbag. At 22, she had managed to rebuild a quiet life in Philadelphia after her father's unexpected death. Teaching at the girls' academy had provided enough income to keep her mother comfortable in their reduced circumstances, but the letter had changed everything. Her father's mine in Utah, previously thought worthless, had yielded a promising silver vein. To claim it, Catherine needed to appear in person before year's end. The journey by rail took her as far as Denver, but the last 100 miles required a stagecoach pulled by horses. Even the thought made her palms slick with sweat. "Miss, are you boarding or not?" The conductor's impatient voice pulled Catherine back to the present. "Yes," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I am." 2 weeks later, Catherine found herself in a cramped stagecoach bouncing mercilessly along what barely passed for a road. Dust seeped through every crack, coating her traveling clothes and filling her lungs despite the handkerchief pressed against her mouth. The 4 horses pulling the coach seemed wild and unpredictable to her anxious eyes, their powerful bodies surging forward with terrifying strength. When the stagecoach lurched violently to avoid a fallen branch, Catherine clutched the leather strap hanging from the ceiling so tightly her knuckles turned white. The elderly woman beside her patted her arm sympathetically. "First time out west, dear." Catherine nodded, unable to speak as they hit another bump that sent her stomach lurching into her throat. "You'll get used to it," the woman said confidently. "Though I must say Monticello is quite remote. Family business, my father's mine," Catherine managed. "I've inherited it." The woman's eyebrows shot up. "A lady mine owner. Well, that'll certainly set tongues wagging." Catherine hadn't considered how unusual her situation would appear. In Philadelphia, she had been just another genteel young woman struggling to maintain appearances after financial reversal. In the West, she would be an oddity, perhaps even a target. As the stagecoach rounded a bend, the town of Monticello appeared in the distance, a collection of wooden buildings shimmering in the heat of the late afternoon sun. The San Juan Mountains rose majestically in the background, their peaks still capped with snow despite the summer warmth. The coach slowed as they approached the town's main street. Catherine's heart raced faster with every plodding step the horses took. Soon she would need to disembark, find lodging, and somehow make her way to the lawyer's office, all while surrounded by the animals that haunted her nightmares. Monticello called the driver as the coach rolled to a stop outside the town's only hotel, a 2-story wooden structure with peeling paint and a sagging porch. "End of the line, folks." Catherine waited until the other passengers had disembarked before attempting to move. Her legs felt leaden, her breathing shallow. Through the coach window, she could see horses tied to hitching posts all along the street, massive, muscular beasts that could kill with a single kick or throw. "Miss, you coming out?" The driver peered in at her, his weathered face creased with impatience. "Yes," she whispered. "Just give me a moment." Taking a deep breath, Catherine gathered her courage and stepped carefully down from the coach, keeping as much distance as possible between herself and the team of horses. Her legs wobbled beneath her, partly from the long journey and partly from fear. The driver tossed her carpetbag onto the boardwalk with little ceremony. "Hotel's right there," he said, gesturing to the building behind her. "Best accommodations in town, which ain't saying much." Catherine nodded her thanks, picking up her bag and turning toward the hotel. She'd taken only 3 steps when a commotion further up the street caught her attention. A group of cowboys had emerged from the saloon, laughing and shouting. One of them, clearly intoxicated, stumbled against a hitching post, startling the horses tied there. One of the animals reared up, its massive hooves pawing at the air mere yards from where Catherine stood. The sight froze her blood. Her vision narrowed to a pinpoint, her breath caught in her throat. The world tilted dangerously, and Catherine felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Through the haze of panic, she became aware of a deep voice murmuring reassurances close to her ear. "Easy now. You're all right. Horse is settled down. Nothing to fear." Catherine blinked rapidly, forcing herself to focus on the man supporting her weight. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy: faded denim, sturdy boots, a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. His face was partially shadowed by the brim of his hat, but she could see a strong jaw covered with several days' worth of stubble. "Thank you," she managed, attempting to regain her footing. Not fond of horses." He asked, his voice carrying the hint of a smile though his expression remained serious. "Noticed how you were keeping your distance from the team." Catherine straightened her spine, embarrassed by her weakness. "I had an accident some years ago. I'm not comfortable around them anymore." The cowboy nodded, releasing her once he was sure she could stand independently. "Name's Cole Zachariah," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "Folks call me Cole." "Catherine James," she replied automatically, the social graces drilled into her since childhood taking over despite her rattled nerves. "Miss James," he acknowledged. "New in town?" "Yes, I've just arrived to settle some business regarding my father's property." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You're John James's daughter." "The mine owner." Catherine's surprise must have shown on her face because Cole's expression softened. "Small town," he explained. "News travels fast, and your father was well respected here despite being an Eastern investor. Sorry about your loss." "Thank you," Catherine said, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "I need to meet with Mr. Harrison, the lawyer handling my father's affairs." Cole nodded. "His office is down at the end of the street, but he won't be in until morning. You planning to stay at the hotel?" "Yes, I suppose I am." Catherine glanced at the dilapidated structure with trepidation. "Is it reputable?" A ghost of a smile crossed Cole's face. "As reputable as anything gets in these parts, which is to say it's clean enough and the owner's wife cooks a decent meal. I can walk you there if you like." Under normal circumstances, Catherine would have refused such an offer from a stranger. But these were not normal circumstances, and the thought of walking alone down a street lined with horses made her stomach clench with fear. "That would be very kind," she said finally. "Thank you." Cole picked up her carpetbag before she could protest and gestured toward the hotel. "Best keep to the boardwalk," he advised. "Less chance of getting trampled that way." As they walked, Catherine noticed Cole deliberately positioning himself between her and the street where horses were tied. It was a small kindness, but one that allowed her to breathe more easily. "So what brings a Philadelphia lady to Monticello?" Cole asked conversationally. Most folks heading west stop at more civilized towns. How did you know I'm from Philadelphia? Cole shrugged. Your accent, and the quality of your clothes, though they're not suited to life out here. Catherine glanced down at her traveling dress, now coated with a layer of dust and looking decidedly worse for wear. I don't intend to stay long, she said. Just enough time to settle my father's affairs and sell the mine. Cole's steps slowed slightly. Sell the silver spur? That's a shame. Your father spent years developing that claim. You knew him well. I worked for him for a time, Cole replied. Helped secure the property, dealt with claim jumpers. I still keep an eye on things out there, make sure no one's trespassing. They reached the hotel and Cole opened the door for her. Mrs. Peterson, he called out. Got a new guest for you. A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from a back room, wiping her hands on an apron. Cole Zachariah, don't you be shouting in my establishment, she scolded, though her eyes were kind. She turned her attention to Catherine. Welcome to the Monticello Hotel, miss. You looking for a room? Yes, please, Catherine replied. I'm Catherine James. I've just arrived from Philadelphia. Mrs. Peterson's face lit up with recognition. John James's daughter, we've been expecting you. Your father was a good man, always paid his bills on time and never caused trouble, unlike some I could mention. She shot a meaningful look at Cole, who raised his hands in mock surrender. That was one time, Mrs. Peterson, and I paid for the broken chair. See that you remember it. The older woman sniffed before returning her attention to Catherine. I've got a nice room at the back, quieter there, away from the street. Dinner's at 6, breakfast at 7. Washrooms down the hall, fresh water delivered twice daily. Catherine completed the arrangements, and Mrs. Peterson handed her a large iron key. Second floor, last door on the left. Cole, make yourself useful and carry the lady's bag up. Before Catherine could protest, Cole was already heading for the stairs, her carpetbag in hand. She followed, lifting her skirts slightly to navigate the narrow staircase. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand with pitcher and basin, and a chest of drawers. A single window looked out over the hills behind the town. It's not what you're used to, I expect, Cole said, setting her bag down by the bed. But it's the best Monticello has to offer. It will be fine, Catherine assured him, though in truth, she'd never stayed anywhere so rustic. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Zachariah. Cole, he corrected. Nobody calls me Mr. Zachariah except the judge when I've been caught brawling. Despite herself, Catherine smiled. Does that happen often? Often enough, he admitted with a shrug. Listen, if you're planning to visit the mine, you'll need a guide. The trail up there isn't safe for someone unfamiliar with the territory. Catherine's smile faded. Would that require horseback riding? Cole studied her face for a moment. Ordinarily, yes. But there's a wagon trail most of the way. It's slower, but if you're not comfortable on horseback. I'm not, she said firmly. Not at all, he nodded, accepting her statement without question. Then we'll find another way. I could arrange to take you out there tomorrow after you meet with Harrison, if you'd like. Catherine hesitated. She barely knew this man, and accepting his escort went against everything she'd been taught about propriety. Yet something in his steady gaze reassured her. That would be helpful, she said finally. Thank you. I'll come by Harrison's office around noon then, Cole said, moving toward the door. Rest up, Miss James. You've had a long journey. After Cole departed, Catherine sank onto the bed, exhaustion from the journey finally catching up with her. Through the open window, she could hear the sounds of the town, distant laughter from the saloon, the clatter of wagons, and the occasional whinny of a horse that made her heart skip painfully. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a clean dress, and made her way downstairs for the evening meal. The dining room contained only a few tables, most of them empty. Mrs. Peterson served a simple but hearty stew with fresh bread, and Catherine ate gratefully, realizing how hungry she'd been. "First time out west?" asked a man at a nearby table, his tone friendly. Catherine nodded politely. "Yes, I've just arrived from Philadelphia. Business or pleasure?" "Business," she replied, hoping to discourage further questions. The man seemed to take the hint and returned to his meal. As Catherine finished her own dinner, she couldn't help overhearing snippets of conversation from the other diners talk of cattle prices, mining claims, and the ongoing troubles with water rights. This world was so different from the one she'd left behind. When she returned to her room, Catherine found herself drawn to the window. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. In the distance, she could see the outline of what must be her father's mine, the Silver Spur, Cole had called it. For the first time since receiving the lawyer's letter, Catherine allowed herself to wonder what her father's life had been like here, so far from the polished society of Philadelphia. Why had he chosen this remote, rugged place? And what would she find when she visited the mine tomorrow? With those questions swirling in her mind, Catherine prepared for bed, grateful for the clean sheets and soft pillow. Despite her exhaustion, sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of thundering hooves and the sensation of falling. Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the window. Catherine dressed carefully in her most practical day dress, a navy blue cotton with minimal trim, and secured her hair in a neat bun. After a breakfast of eggs and biscuits, she set out for Mr. Harrison's office, keeping to the boardwalk and averting her eyes from the horses tied along the street. The lawyer's office was a small building near the end of the main street, distinguished by a painted sign reading Harrison and Sons, Attorneys. Inside, a young clerk looked up from his ledger. "May I help you, miss? I'm Catherine James. I have an appointment with Mr. Harrison." The clerk's eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Of course, Miss James. Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Please come this way." He led her to a back office where an elderly man with spectacles and a neat white beard sat behind a cluttered desk. Mr. Harrison rose when she entered, extending a hand in greeting. "Miss James, welcome to Monticello. Please have a seat. May I offer you some coffee?" "No, thank you," Catherine declined, settling into the chair opposite the desk. "I'm eager to discuss my father's affairs." Harrison nodded, retrieving a thick folder from a nearby shelf. "Of course. First, allow me to express my condolences on your father's passing. He was a respected businessman here, and his death came as a shock to many." "Thank you," Catherine said automatically. "The letter you sent mentioned that the mine has become productive." "Indeed." Harrison adjusted his spectacles. "For years, the Silver Spur yielded little, but last winter, your father's workers struck a promising vein of silver ore. Initial assays suggest it could be quite valuable." He slid several documents across the desk for her inspection. "These are the most recent financial reports, along with the deed to the property and details of the claim boundaries. As your father's sole heir, everything now belongs to you." Catherine scanned the papers, struggling to make sense of the technical terminology. "And my father's debts, have they all been settled?" "There were minimal debts," Harrison assured her. "Your father lived simply, investing most of his capital into the mine itself. The property is free and clear, and there's a modest sum in the bank that should cover operating expenses for several months." "I see." Catherine took a deep breath. "Mr. Harrison, I'll be frank. I have no knowledge of mining nor any desire to remain in Monticello indefinitely. My intention is to sell the mine as quickly as possible and return to Philadelphia." Harrison's bushy eyebrows rose slightly. I see. Well, that is certainly your right, though I must advise that hastiness might result in accepting a price below true value. Mining properties can be difficult to assess accurately, particularly when new veins have just been discovered. Nevertheless, I would like to proceed with finding a buyer, Catherine insisted. I understand that I should inspect the property first. Cole Zachariah has offered to escort me there today. At the mention of Cole's name, Harrison's expression shifted subtly. Zachariah is certainly familiar with the property. He worked closely with your father. He hesitated. However, you should know that there are already interested buyers. George Harrington, who owns several productive mines in the area, approached me the moment news of your arrival spread. Is he offering a fair price? Fair is relative, Miss James. Harrington is a businessman who sees opportunity in your lack of mining experience and presumed eagerness to return east. Harrison removed his spectacles, polishing them thoughtfully. My advice would be to take your time, assess the property thoroughly, and consider all offers carefully. Catherine frowned. I appreciate your counsel, Mr. Harrison, but my situation doesn't allow for prolonged deliberation. My mother depends on me, and my position at the academy won't remain open indefinitely. I understand, Harrison said gently. But at least visit the mine before making any decisions. Your father devoted years of his life to developing that claim. You owe it to his memory to understand what you're selling. The lawyer's words struck a chord. Catherine had never been particularly close to her father, who had spent most of her childhood years traveling on business. The mine represented his passion, the thing that had drawn him away from his family again and again. Very well, she conceded. I'll visit the property today. Harrison nodded approvingly. Excellent. And Miss James, be careful about discussing your plans openly. Monticello may seem small and friendly, but mining interests attract all manner of opportunists. With that warning lingering in her mind, Catherine left the lawyer's office with a folder of documents tucked securely in her reticule. She paused on the boardwalk, momentarily unsure of her next move. Cole had said he would meet her at noon, but it was barely 10 o'clock. A movement across the street caught her attention. A tall man in an expensive suit was watching her from the doorway of the assayer's office. When their eyes met, he touched the brim of his hat and smiled a calculating smile that didn't reach his eyes. Catherine turned away quickly, deciding to return to the hotel until Cole arrived. She'd taken only a few steps when a commotion erupted further down the street. Two cowboys on horseback were racing recklessly through town, whooping and laughing as pedestrians scattered before them. Catherine froze, terror seizing her limbs as one of the horses veered dangerously close to the boardwalk. The animal's massive body filled her vision, triggering memories of her own accident, the terrifying moment when the horse had reared unexpectedly, the sickening sensation of falling, the explosion of pain when she hit the ground. Get those animals under control. A familiar voice cut through her panic. Cole Zachariah strode into the street, placing himself directly in the path of the oncoming riders. He caught the bridle of the nearest horse, forcing the animal to halt. Damn it, Jenkins, we have rules in town, Cole snapped at the rider. No racing on the main street. The cowboy, barely more than a boy, looked abashed. Sorry, Cole, got carried away. Take it outside town limits, Cole ordered, releasing the bridle. Someone's going to get killed. As the chastened cowboys moved off at a more sedate pace, Cole turned and spotted Catherine still frozen on the boardwalk. He approached her quickly, concern evident in his expression. Miss James, are you all right? Catherine realized she was trembling, her breath coming in short gasps. Yes, I'm fine. Cole clearly didn't believe her. "You're white as a sheet. Come on, let's get you sitting down." He guided her to a bench outside the general store, positioning himself between her and the street. "Take deep breaths," he instructed gently. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." Catherine followed his directions, gradually regaining her composure. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "It's foolish, I know." "Fear isn't foolish," Cole replied. "It's usually there for a reason." The simple statement, delivered without judgment, eased some of Catherine's embarrassment. "I met with Mr. Harrison," she said, changing the subject. "He suggested I should see the mine before making any decisions about selling." "Harrison's right about that," Cole agreed. "And I'm here to take you there, as promised, though I'm early." He hesitated. "I've brought a wagon. It's not the most comfortable ride, but it'll get us there without you having to mount up." The consideration touched Catherine. "Thank you, that's very thoughtful." Cole shrugged off her gratitude. "No trouble. Wagon's just around the corner when you're ready to go." Catherine gathered her courage. "I'm ready now." The wagon proved to be a simple farm vehicle with wooden sides and a seat wide enough for 2 people. Cole helped Catherine climb up, then settled beside her and took the reins. The 2 horses hitched to the wagon stood placidly, but Catherine couldn't help tensing at their proximity. "They're gentle as lambs," Cole assured her, noting her discomfort. "Old Bill and Ted here have pulled this wagon for years. Nothing spooks them." Catherine nodded but kept her hands tightly clasped in her lap as Cole clicked his tongue to set the horses in motion. The wagon rolled out of town, following a rutted dirt road that wound into the foothills. "It's about 5 miles to the mine," Cole explained. "Road gets rougher as we climb, but the view's worth it." He was right on both counts. The wagon jolted painfully over rocks and ruts, and several times Catherine had to grab the seat to avoid being thrown. But the scenery gradually opened up around them, revealing breathtaking vistas of mountains and valleys stretching to the horizon. "It's beautiful," Catherine admitted, momentarily forgetting her fear as they paused at the top of a rise. The mountains seemed close enough to touch, their slopes covered with pine forests that gave way to meadows bright with wildflowers. "Your father loved this view," Cole said quietly. "Said it reminded him why he kept coming back year after year, even when the mine wasn't producing." "You knew him well," Catherine observed, studying Cole's profile. "Well enough. I was just a raw kid when I first met him, barely 18 and looking for any work I could find. He hired me to help guard the claim, taught me a lot about mining and about life." Cole paused. "He spoke of you often." Catherine looked away. "We weren't close. He was rarely home." "He regretted that," Cole said simply. "Said his biggest mistake was not bringing his family west with him." The revelation stirred complicated emotions in Catherine's chest. Her childhood memories of her father were mostly of absences, empty chairs at dinner tables, missed recitals and birthdays. The idea that he had spoken of her, perhaps even missed her, was both comforting and painful. They continued in silence for a while, the wagon creaking as it climbed steadily upward. Eventually, Cole pointed to a wooden structure visible on the mountainside ahead. "There's the main entrance to the Silver Spur. Your father's cabin is just beyond it." As they drew closer, Catherine could see a collection of buildings clustered near the mine entrance, a bunkhouse for workers, storage sheds, and a small, sturdy cabin built of logs and stone. A creek ran nearby, its water clear and swift. "It's more developed than I expected," Catherine admitted as Cole brought the wagon to a halt in the clearing before the cabin. "Your father invested everything he had into this place," Cole replied, setting the brake and jumping down from the wagon. He came around to Catherine's side, offering his hand to help her descend. He believed in it when nobody else did. Catherine accepted his assistance, carefully avoiding looking at the horses as she stepped down. "Are there workers here now?" Cole shook his head. "Operations were suspended after your father's death, waiting for instructions from the heir that'd be you. But the foreman, Hank Davis, checks on things every few days. Good man, Hank." He led Catherine to the cabin and produced a key from his pocket. "Your father gave me this for emergencies," he explained, unlocking the door. "Figured you'd want to see where he lived." The interior of the cabin was simple but comfortable, a single room with a stone fireplace, a bed built into one wall, a table and chairs, and shelves filled with books and mining journals. Everything was neat and orderly, covered with a fine layer of dust from weeks without occupancy. Catherine moved slowly around the space, trying to reconcile this rustic dwelling with her memories of her father, a well-dressed businessman who had favored fine cigars and brandy in their Philadelphia home. "It's so modest," she murmured. "Out here, a man is judged by his actions, not his possessions," Cole replied. "Your father earned respect through hard work and fair dealing." On a small desk by the window, Catherine noticed several framed photographs. One showed a much younger version of her mother, smiling in her wedding dress. Another captured Catherine herself at about 16, formally posed in a studio portrait. The final photo showed the three of them together, a rare family moment that Catherine barely remembered. The sight of these carefully preserved mementos brought an unexpected tightness to her throat. Her father had kept them close, here in his wilderness home. "Would you like to see the mine itself?" Cole asked gently, giving her a moment to compose herself. Catherine nodded, setting the photograph down carefully. "Yes, I should understand what I'm selling." Cole led her back outside and toward the mine entrance. A large wooden structure framed the opening into the mountainside, with rails extending outward for ore carts. The entrance was currently sealed with a heavy door secured by a padlock. "We won't go inside today," Cole explained. "It's not safe without proper lamps and a guide who knows the tunnels, but I can explain the basics." He proceeded to describe how the mine operated, pointing out various features and equipment. Catherine listened attentively, trying to grasp the fundamentals of the operation that had consumed her father's later years. "The new silver vein is about 200 feet in," Cole concluded. "Rich enough that your father was finally seeing returns on all his investment." "Harrison probably showed you the assay reports?" "Yes, though I confess I didn't understand much of the technical information," Catherine admitted. "Mr. Harrison also mentioned that someone named George Harrington is interested in buying." Cole's expression darkened. "Harrington would be. He's been trying to get his hands on the silver spur for years. You don't approve of him as a buyer." "It's not my place to approve or disapprove," Cole said carefully. "But Harrington has a reputation for underpaying workers and cutting corners on safety. He's also not above using questionable tactics to pressure claim owners into selling." Catherine frowned. "Mr. Harrison implied something similar. Do you think this Harrington might cause trouble? Let's just say I wouldn't be surprised." Cole gestured toward the creek. "There's something else you should see before we head back." He led her along a narrow path beside the flowing water until they reached a small clearing. Here, a simple wooden cross stood beneath a towering pine tree. Carved into the cross was a single name: John James. Catherine stopped short, a mixture of emotions washing over her. "My father is buried here," Cole nodded. "It was his wish. Said he wanted to rest where he could hear the creek and see the mountains." He stepped back, giving her privacy. "I'll check on the horses. Take all the time you need." Left alone, Catherine approached the grave hesitantly. She had not attended her father's funeral. The news of his death had reached Philadelphia weeks after it occurred, making the journey west seem pointless. Now, Standing before his final resting place, she felt a profound sense of disconnection from her father, from his life here, from the passion that had driven him to this remote wilderness. "I don't know who you were out here," she whispered to the silent grave. "The man I knew was always leaving, always chasing the next opportunity. Who was the man who loved these mountains, who kept my photograph on his desk?" Only the gentle sound of the creek answered her. Eventually, Catherine returned to where Cole waited with the wagon. Neither spoke as they began the journey back to town, each lost in their own thoughts. As they descended from the foothills, Cole finally broke the silence. "What will you do now?" "I still intend to sell," Catherine replied, "but perhaps not as hastily as I first planned. Mr. Harrison suggested I should consider all offers carefully." Cole nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's wise. There's no rush, is there?" "My mother depends on my income," Catherine explained, "and my teaching position won't remain open indefinitely." "There are ways to generate income from the mine without selling outright," Cole suggested. "You could hire a manager to oversee operations while you return east." "I know nothing about managing a mine." "You could learn," Cole said simply. "Your father did." Before Catherine could respond, a sudden movement in the brush beside the road startled the horses. The animals shied sideways, causing the wagon to lurch violently. Catherine cried out, gripping the seat with white-knuckled terror as memories of her fall flashed before her eyes. Cole controlled the team with firm, confident hands, murmuring soothing words until the horses settled. But Catherine remained rigid with fear, her breath coming in short gasps. "They're calm now," Cole assured her. "Just a deer crossing the path, nothing to worry about." But Catherine couldn't stop trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't when they move like that." Understanding dawned in Cole's eyes. "Your accident, that's how it happened. A horse spooked," Catherine nodded, unable to elaborate further. "And you were thrown," Cole continued gently. "Badly hurt. My leg was shattered," she managed. "The doctors said I might never walk properly again. It took nearly a year before I could manage without crutches." Cole was silent for a moment. "Yet here you are, walking just fine. That took courage." "Not courage," Catherine corrected. "Necessity. My father's death left us with limited means. I had to recover to support my mother." "Sounds like courage to me," Cole insisted. "And now you've traveled all the way to Utah Territory despite your fear. That's not nothing, Miss James." His matter-of-fact admiration eased something in Catherine's chest. For the first time, she saw her recovery not as mere survival but as an act of strength. They continued toward town, the wagon swaying gently with the motion of the horses. As they approached Monticello, Catherine noticed Cole glancing repeatedly at the western horizon, where dark clouds were gathering. "Storm coming," he explained, following her gaze. "We'll just beat it back to town." They reached the hotel as the first heavy drops began to fall. Cole helped Catherine down from the wagon, then secured the horses to a nearby post. "Thank you for taking me to the mine," Catherine said sincerely. "It was enlightening." Cole touched the brim of his hat. "My pleasure, Miss James. Will you be staying in town much longer?" "A few days at least while I consider my options." She hesitated. "Mr. Zachariah Cole, I may need further guidance regarding the mine. Would you be willing to assist me?" A smile flickered across his face. "I'm at your service, Miss James. Perhaps we could discuss it further over dinner. Mrs. Peterson makes an excellent venison stew on Thursdays." The invitation surprised Catherine, yet she found herself nodding. "That would be pleasant, thank you." As Cole turned to go, Catherine called after him, "The horses, will they be all right in the rain?" Cole glanced back, something warming in his gaze. "They'll be fine. I'll make sure they're properly stabled once I've delivered the wagon." It was a small thing, her concern for animals she feared, but the moment felt significant. Catherine watched Cole lead the wagon away before hurrying inside to escape the increasingly heavy rainfall. In her room, Catherine changed out of her travel-stained dress and washed away the dust of the journey. As she brushed out her hair, she found herself thinking about Cole Zachariah, his quiet competence, his knowledge of her father, his respect for her fear without treating her as fragile or foolish. She had not come to Monticello looking for a guide or a friend, let alone anything more. Her plan had been simple: claim her inheritance, sell it quickly, and return to her orderly life in Philadelphia. Yet something about this place, about the mine and the mountains and the man who had shown them to her, tugged at her with unexpected force. That evening, Catherine descended to the hotel dining room to find Cole already waiting, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt, though his clothes remained those of a working man. He rose when she entered, pulling out her chair with an unexpected courtliness. "You look refreshed," he observed as she settled across from him. "The journey didn't exhaust you too badly, I hope?" "Not at all," Catherine assured him, though in truth her leg ached from the rough wagon ride. The old injury always troubled her after exertion, a persistent reminder of her fall. Mrs. Peterson brought steaming bowls of venison stew and a basket of fresh bread. "You too enjoy," she said with a smile that contained a hint of matchmaking speculation. Catherine felt her cheeks warm slightly as she turned her attention to the meal. "This is delicious," she commented after her first bite. "I confess I didn't expect such fine cooking in a frontier town." "Mrs. Peterson came out here as a new bride 30 years ago," Cole explained. "Brought her Eastern cooking skills with her. Her husband struck it rich with an early silver claim, then lost it all gambling. Now they run the hotel, and everyone in town is grateful for her talents." The conversation flowed easily as they ate, with Cole answering Catherine's questions about Monticello and mining operations. He spoke knowledgeably but without condescension, making complex concepts accessible without oversimplification. "Tell me about yourself," Catherine said finally. "How did a man like you end up in Monticello?" Cole's expression turned reflective. "I was born in Kansas, raised on a cattle ranch until my father died when I was 16. Mother couldn't maintain the place alone, so we sold up. She remarried and settled in Denver, but city life wasn't for me. I drifted west, worked odd jobs, cowhand, mine guard, freight driver, until I landed here." "And found your place," Catherine observed. "Something like that." Cole's gaze met hers across the table. "Monticello's rough around the edges, but it's honest. A man can build something here without worrying too much about who his grandfather was or what school he attended." Catherine understood the implicit contrast with Eastern society. "And yet my father never settled here permanently. John had roots in Philadelphia, you and your mother." Cole shrugged. "He talked about bringing you both west, but I think he worried about the hardships, especially for your mother." "She would have hated it," Catherine admitted. "Mother values her social circle and creature comforts, but I wonder if I might have." She trailed off, surprised by her own thought. Would she have appreciated this wild, beautiful country if she'd encountered it under different circumstances? Without her father's death and the burden of decision it had placed upon her, you might have what? Cole prompted gently. Catherine shook her head. "It doesn't matter. The past is unchangeable." They finished their meal with lighter conversation, and as they parted for the evening, Cole asked, "Would you like to see more of the area tomorrow? There are places we could visit by wagon, nothing too strenuous." The invitation tempted her more than it should have. "I should focus on business matters," Catherine demurred. "Perhaps another day." Cole nodded, accepting her decision without argument. Another day then. Good night, Miss James. Good night, Mr. Zachariah. She paused. Cole. The use of his given name drew a smile that transformed his weathered face, revealing dimples she hadn't noticed before. Catherine, he responded, the sound of her name in his deep voice sending an unexpected warmth through her chest. Catherine retreated to her room with confused emotions. She had come to Monticello for one purpose: to claim and sell her inheritance. Forming attachments here of any kind would only complicate matters. Yet she found herself looking forward to seeing Cole again, to learning more about this place that had captured her father's heart. The next morning, Catherine was awakened by raised voices from the street below her window. Pulling on her robe, she peered outside to see Cole engaged in a heated discussion with a well-dressed man she recognized from town, the same man who had watched her from the assayer's office the previous day. Though she couldn't make out their words clearly, the confrontation appeared tense. The other man gesticulated forcefully, his face flushed with anger, while Cole stood with arms crossed, his stance unyielding. Finally, the well-dressed man stalked away and Cole remained staring after him, jaw clenched in evident frustration. Catherine dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. In the hotel lobby, Mrs. Peterson was arranging fresh flowers, her expression disapproving. Trouble outside? Catherine inquired casually. Mrs. Peterson sniffed. George Harrington making demands again. That man thinks his money entitles him to whatever he wants. I understand he's interested in buying my father's mine. Interested is putting it mildly, Mrs. Peterson replied. He's been after the silver spur for years. Your father refused to sell, even when times were lean. Drove Harrington half mad with frustration. She paused, lowering her voice. Be careful of that one, Miss James. He doesn't take kindly to being denied. With that warning added to others she'd received, Catherine stepped outside into the bright morning sunshine. Cole was nowhere to be seen, but as she stood uncertainly on the hotel porch, a young boy approached her. Miss James. The child, perhaps 10 years old, clutched his cap nervously. Mr. Cole asked me to give you this. He thrust a folded note into her hand. Thank you, Catherine replied, pressing a penny into the boy's palm. He grinned and scampered off. The note was brief. Had to ride out to check on trouble at the mine, back by evening, stay in town. CZ. Catherine frowned, concern rising in her chest. What kind of trouble required immediate attention? And why had Cole instructed her to stay in town? With no immediate way to find answers, Catherine decided to follow through with her original plan for the day, meeting with Mr. Harrison to discuss potential buyers for the mine. She tucked the note into her pocket and set off for the lawyer's office. Harrison greeted her warmly, ushering her into his cluttered office. Miss James, good morning. I trust you found your visit to the property informative. Yes, very, Catherine replied, taking the offered seat. Cole, Mr. Zachariah, was most helpful in explaining the operation. Harrison nodded approvingly. Zachariah knows that mine almost as well as your father did. He cleared his throat. I understand that George Harrington approached you already. Not directly, though I saw him arguing with Cole this morning. The lawyer's expression turned grave. Harrington is persistent. He's already submitted a formal offer for the silver spur. Harrison retrieved a document from his desk. I must present it to you as your legal representative, though I advise you to consider it carefully. Catherine accepted the paper, scanning its contents. The sum offered was substantial enough to secure her and her mother's comfort for many years, yet something about the transaction felt wrong. This seems generous, she said cautiously. At first glance, perhaps. Harrison removed his spectacles, polishing them thoughtfully. But based on the latest assays, the silver vein your father discovered could be worth considerably more over time. Harrington is offering cash now for potential wealth later. I see. Catherine set the document aside. Are there other interested buyers? Several have inquired informally. The Denver Mining Consortium expressed interest, as did Samuel Whitaker from Colorado Springs. Both are reputable operations with fair labor practices. Harrison's emphasis on the last point was subtle but clear. And if I were to retain ownership but hire a manager? Harrison's bushy eyebrows rose in surprise. That would be viable, certainly. The mine was profitable in its last months of operation under your father. With proper management, it should continue to provide income. He studied her face. Are you considering that option? I'm considering all options, Catherine replied carefully. I came here intending to sell, but I find myself hesitant. My father devoted years of his life to developing the silver spur. I should understand its true value before making a decision. A wise approach, Harrison approved. Take your time, Miss James. There's no need to rush into anything. As Catherine left the lawyer's office, she was so preoccupied with her thoughts that she nearly collided with a woman on the boardwalk. Oh, pardon me, Catherine apologized, steadying herself. The woman, perhaps a few years older than Catherine, with dark hair and kind eyes, smiled warmly. No harm done. You must be Miss James. I'm Sarah Miller, the schoolteacher. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Miller. Miss, Sarah corrected, though not for lack of proposals. Men outnumber women 10 to 1 in these parts, she laughed lightly. I understand you're a teacher as well back east. Yes, at a girls' academy in Philadelphia, Catherine confirmed, warming to this friendly woman. How did you know? Small town, Sarah explained with a smile. News travels fast, especially when it concerns John James's daughter. Would you care to join me for tea? I was just heading to the cafe. Catherine accepted gratefully, finding herself drawn to Sarah's straightforward manner. The cafe was a small establishment adjacent to the general store, offering simple refreshments and a view of the main street. Over cups of strong tea and slices of apple pie, the two women found common ground in their teaching experiences. Sarah had come west 5 years earlier, seeking adventure and independence. You ever regret it? Catherine asked. Leaving civilization behind? Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. Sometimes I miss certain comforts, proper concerts, libraries, paved streets. But the compensations are considerable. Here, I have real impact on my students' lives, and there's a freedom in frontier life that's hard to find back east. Freedom, Catherine repeated. My father seemed to find that here as well. John was well respected, Sarah confirmed. He treated people fairly, regardless of their station. When the last winter turned harsh, he provided food and fuel for families who couldn't afford it. She paused. I understand you're considering selling the mine. Word does travel quickly, Catherine observed with a rueful smile. Yes, that was my intention when I arrived. And now, Sarah's perceptive gaze held Catherine's. Now I'm uncertain. Catherine traced the rim of her teacup. The silver spur was my father's passion. Selling it feels somehow disloyal to his memory, yet I have responsibilities in Philadelphia. Including your fear, Sarah said gently. Catherine looked up sharply. My fear of horses, Sarah clarified. Cole mentioned your accident. Living here would mean confronting that fear daily. The observation, though kindly meant, struck Catherine deeply. Was she letting her fear influence a business decision? Using her mother's needs and her Philadelphia position as justification to avoid confronting the animals that terrified her? I hadn't considered that aspect, Catherine admitted, but you're right. Life here would be impossible for someone who can't ride or even approach a horse without panic. Sarah reached across the table to touch Catherine's hand. Fear can be overcome, especially with the right support. Her eyes held a knowing gleam. Cole Zachariah has a way with skittish creatures, human or equine. Before Catherine could respond to this pointed observation, the cafe door burst open. A young miner stood there, hat in hand, breathing heavily as though he'd been running. "Miss Miller," he gasped, "is Miss James with you?" "I'm here," Catherine answered, rising to her feet as alarm coursed through her. "What's happened?" "There's been trouble at the Silver Spur," the young man reported. "Claim jumpers tried to move in. Cole and Hank Davis drove them off, but Cole took a bullet in the shoulder. They've brought him to Doc Evans." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. "Is he? How badly is he hurt?" "Doc says he'll live, but it was a near thing. He's asking for you, miss." Without a word to Sarah, Catherine gathered her skirts and hurried from the cafe, following the miner toward the doctor's small house at the edge of town. Her heart pounded painfully against her ribs, each beat seeming to echo Cole's name. The doctor's house doubled as his clinic, with a small waiting room and 2 examining rooms. When Catherine entered, she found several miners gathered there, their expressions somber. One of them, a grizzled older man with a weathered face, stepped forward. "Miss James." "I'm Hank Davis, the mine foreman. Cole's through there." He gestured to a closed door. "Doc's patching him up." "What happened?" Catherine demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Hank removed his hat, turning it anxiously in his hands. "4 men trying to stake a claim inside your boundary markers. Cole and I rode out after getting reports from a prospector who spotted them. They opened fire as soon as they saw us." His jaw tightened. "Cole took a bullet meant for me. Man saved my life. You know who they were." Hank's expression darkened. "Hired guns, not regular miners, and they came prepared with survey stakes already marked with Harrington Mining Company tags." He spat the name as though it tasted foul. "Harrington." Catherine felt cold anger replace her fear. "You're certain?" "Saw the tags myself," Hank confirmed grimly. "Not the first time Harrington's pulled such tricks, but it's the first time he's used guns instead of legal maneuvering." Before Catherine could respond, the examining room door opened, and an elderly man with spectacles and a blood-spattered apron emerged. "Miss James?" he inquired. When Catherine nodded, he continued, "I'm Dr. Evans. Mr. Zachariah is asking for you. He's weak from blood loss but lucid. Try not to excite him." Catherine entered the small room, her heart constricting at the sight of Cole lying pale and still on an examining table. His shirt had been cut away, revealing a muscular torso now partially covered with bandages stained crimson around his left shoulder. "Catherine," Cole murmured, his eyes fluttering open as she approached. "You're safe." The relief in his voice touched something deep inside her. "Of course I'm safe," she replied, moving to his side. "I stayed in town as you instructed. It's you who's been shot." A ghost of his usual smile crossed his lips. "Just a scratch." "A scratch that nearly killed you," Catherine retorted, surprising herself with the fierceness of her response. "Hank told me what happened. Harrington's men," Cole's expression hardened. "Almost certainly, though proving it will be difficult. Harrington's careful about keeping his hands clean." "He offered to buy the mine," Catherine informed him. "Mr. Harrison showed me the offer this morning, and I declined." The decision had crystallized the moment she'd heard of the attack. "I won't reward such tactics." Cole studied her face for a long moment. "What will you do?" It was the question Catherine had been avoiding since her arrival in Monticello. Now, standing beside this man who had risked his life to protect her property, the answer seemed suddenly clear. "I'm staying," she said firmly. "At least long enough to understand what my father built here, long enough to ensure that men like Harrington don't profit from violence and intimidation. Something like pride flickered in Cole's eyes. It won't be easy. Harrington won't give up just because his first attempt failed. Then he'll find I'm more stubborn than he anticipated. Catherine squared her shoulders. Rest now. We'll discuss plans when you're stronger. Cole caught her hand as she turned to go. Thank you, he said softly, for not running. The warmth of his calloused fingers around her sent a current through Catherine's body that had nothing to do with fear. I've done enough running, she replied. It's time I stood my ground. Over the next week, Catherine divided her time between visiting Cole during his recovery and learning everything she could about the Silver Spurs operations. Hank Davis proved an invaluable teacher, patiently explaining the complexities of silver mining and introducing her to the miners who had worked for her father. She was surprised to discover how well her father had been liked by his employees. The men spoke of him with genuine respect, recounting tales of his fairness and generosity. When Catherine mentioned resuming operations, they expressed unanimous eagerness to return to work. Your father ran a good mine, Hank explained as they sat in the cabin reviewing ledgers and production reports. Paid fair wages, maintained safe conditions, treated men like human beings instead of interchangeable tools. That's rare in this business. And profitable. Catherine questioned, still struggling to reconcile the successful businessman these men described with the distant father she had known. Increasingly so, Hank confirmed. The new vein is rich, and your father invested in modern equipment that makes extraction more efficient. He hesitated. Miss James, if I may speak frankly, please do. A mine needs steady leadership. If you're planning to return east eventually, the men need to know who'll be in charge. Uncertainty makes for nervous workers, and nervous workers make mistakes. Catherine nodded, understanding the implied question. I'm not leaving any time soon, Mr. Davis, and when decisions must be made about long-term management, you'll be the first to know. As Cole recovered enough to move about, he began joining these discussions, his knowledge of both mining operations and the local business environment proving invaluable. Catherine found herself increasingly relying on his advice and increasingly aware of his presence in ways that had nothing to do with business. The day Cole was deemed well enough to ride again, he appeared at the hotel with an unexpected proposal. I want to teach you to overcome your fear of horses, he announced without preamble as they sat on the hotel porch after dinner. Catherine stared at him in disbelief. That's impossible. You've seen how I react just being near them. I've seen a woman travel across half the country despite that fear, Cole countered. A woman who faced down George Harrington rather than be intimidated into selling. You have more courage than you give yourself credit for, Catherine. The use of her given name, which had become natural between them during his recovery, still sent a pleasurable warmth through her body, but his suggestion struck at her deepest terror. Cole, I appreciate your confidence, but my accident was traumatic, he finished for her. I understand that. But living here long-term means eventually facing this fear. You can't rely on wagons forever, especially once winter arrives. Catherine knew he was right. Even in the few weeks she'd been in Monticello, the limitations imposed by her fear had become increasingly apparent. Simple journeys that would take an hour on horseback required half a day by wagon, and as Hank had pointed out, a mine owner who couldn't reach her own property in an emergency was a liability. What exactly are you proposing? She asked cautiously. Cole's expression softened. We start small. Just standing near a horse, then touching one. Building trust gradually at your pace. No pressure to mount up until you're absolutely ready. He leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll use the gentlest animal I can find." The sincerity in his voice almost convinced her. "And if I can't do it, if the fear is too strong, then we'll find another solution," Cole promised. "But I don't think we'll need one. You're stronger than your fear, Catherine. I've seen it." His faith in her was both terrifying and exhilarating. After a long moment of consideration, Catherine nodded slowly. "All right, we can try, but I make no promises about the outcome." The relief and joy that transformed Cole's face made something flutter in Catherine's chest. "Tomorrow morning," he said eagerly. "We'll start at dawn when the streets are quiet." The next day dawned clear and cool, with the first hints of autumn crispness in the air. Catherine dressed simply in a practical skirt and shirtwaist, her hair braided and pinned securely. Her stomach twisted with apprehension as she descended to the hotel lobby, where Cole waited. "Ready?" he asked, his eyes searching her face. "As I'll ever be," Catherine replied honestly. Cole led her to a small corral behind the livery stable, where a single horse stood placidly in the early morning light. The animal was smaller than most Catherine had seen around town, a dun-colored mare with a gentle eye and a slightly swayback stance that suggested advanced years. "This is Daisy," Cole introduced, his voice deliberately calm and even. "She's the stable master's personal horse, 20 years old and gentle as they come. She's never thrown a rider in her life." Catherine hung back at the fence, her heart racing as she studied the animal. Daisy looked harmless enough, nothing like the powerful, spirited stallion that had thrown her in Philadelphia. But the fear remained, a visceral reaction that tightened her throat and quickened her breath. "I'm going to lead her over here," Cole explained. "You just stand there. You don't have to touch her or even look directly at her if you don't want to. Just exist in the same space." Catherine nodded wordlessly, gripping the fence rail as Cole approached Daisy with a soft word and a gentle hand on her neck. The mare followed him willingly to where Catherine stood, maintaining a distance of several feet. "That's it," Cole encouraged. "Just breathe. She's not going to come any closer unless you want her to." Catherine forced herself to inhale deeply, then exhale slowly, repeating the pattern until her racing pulse began to slow. Daisy stood quietly, occasionally shifting her weight from one foot to another but making no move to approach. "She seems calm," Catherine observed after several minutes. Cole smiled. "Daisy's seen everything in her 20 years. Not much ruffles her anymore." He stroked the mare's neck. "Would you like to come inside the fence? You can still keep your distance." The suggestion sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Catherine's body, but she forced herself to nod. Cole opened the gate for her, and she stepped cautiously into the corral, remaining close to the fence. "Good," Cole praised. "Now we'll just stay like this for a while. You getting comfortable with her presence, her getting comfortable with yours." They remained that way for nearly half an hour, with Cole speaking softly to both horse and woman, creating a peaceful atmosphere that gradually eased Catherine's tension. By the time the sun had fully risen, she found herself able to watch Daisy without the immediate surge of panic she'd felt initially. "That's enough for today," Cole announced finally. "We don't want to push too hard." "That's it," Catherine was surprised by her own disappointment. "We didn't really do anything." "We did exactly what we needed to do," Cole corrected. "You shared space with a horse without panicking. That's not nothing, Catherine." She realized he was right. For the first time since her accident, she had willingly approached a horse, had remained in its presence without being overwhelmed by terror. It was a small step, but a significant one. "Same time tomorrow?" Cole asked as they walked back toward town. Catherine nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." Each morning for the next week followed the same pattern. Catherine would meet Cole at dawn, and they would spend time with Daisy in the quiet corral. Each day, Catherine moved a little closer to the mare, until finally, on the 7th morning, Cole made a new suggestion. "I think you're ready to touch her," he said quietly, "if you're willing to try." Catherine hesitated, studying Daisy's gentle face. The old mare gazed back with liquid brown eyes that held no threat, no danger. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Hold out your hand, palm flat," Cole demonstrated. "Let her sniff you first, then you can stroke her neck, just a light touch." Taking a deep breath, Catherine extended her hand as instructed. Daisy stretched her neck forward, her soft muzzle tickling Catherine's palm. The sensation was unexpected, warm and velvety, nothing like the hard, dangerous creature of her nightmares. "That's it," Cole encouraged. "Now just run your hand along her neck." Gentle, smooth strokes. With trembling fingers, Catherine reached out and touched the mare's neck. The coarse hair felt warm beneath her hand, the solid muscle underneath a reminder of the animal's strength. But Daisy stood perfectly still, accepting the tentative caress without reaction. "She's softer than I expected," Catherine murmured, gaining confidence with each stroke. "And warm." Cole's smile was radiant. "Horses are a lot like people. They respond to how you treat them. Approach with fear and tension, they get nervous. Approach with confidence and kindness, they respond in kind." Catherine continued stroking Daisy's neck, marveling at how quickly her initial terror had transformed into cautious appreciation. "She's actually quite beautiful, isn't she?" "All horses are beautiful in their own way," Cole agreed. "But Daisy here has special dignity. She's earned her peaceful retirement." As they walked back to town after that session, Cole's hand occasionally brushing against Catherine's, she felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she'd experienced before. This wasn't the achievement of academic excellence or social propriety, the markers of success in her Philadelphia world. This was the conquest of a primal fear, a victory over the trauma that had limited her for years. "You did wonderfully today," Cole said as they paused outside the hotel. "How do you feel?" "Proud," Catherine admitted. "I didn't think I could do it." "I never doubted you for a moment." The warmth in Cole's gaze made her cheeks flush. "Tomorrow, perhaps you might consider sitting on her, with me holding her, of course, just to get the feeling again." Catherine's momentary confidence wavered. "That's a significant step." "It is," Cole acknowledged. "And if you're not ready, we won't do it. This moves at your pace, not mine." His respect for her boundaries, his unwavering patience, touched Catherine deeply. In Philadelphia, men had often dismissed her fears as female hysteria, her intelligence as an oddity to be tolerated rather than valued. Cole treated her as an equal capable of courage, deserving of respect. "I'll think about it," she promised. "For now, I need to meet with Mr. Harrison about reopening the mine." Cole nodded. "Of course, business comes first." But as Catherine walked toward the lawyer's office, her mind remained on Cole, his gentle hands guiding hers as she touched Daisy, his voice steady and encouraging, his eyes warm with pride at her progress. The connection between them had deepened during these morning sessions, evolving into something Catherine was increasingly unwilling to name but unable to deny. The meeting with Harrison went smoothly, with all legal arrangements for resuming mining operations falling neatly into place. As Catherine left his office, a sense of purpose filled her chest. The Silver Spur would operate again not as her father's mine or as a property to be sold, but as her own enterprise. For the first time, she felt truly connected to the legacy John James had left behind. The next morning, Catherine arrived at the corral with both trepidation and determination. Cole was already there, brushing Daisy's coat until it gleamed in the early sunlight. "Good morning," he greeted, his smile warming her more effectively than the rising sun. How are you feeling today? Nervous, Catherine admitted, but ready to try. Cole's eyes brightened with approval. We'll take it slow. First, spend some time greeting her like yesterday. Catherine approached Daisy with more confidence than before, holding out her hand for the mare to sniff before stroking her neck and shoulder. The familiar ritual calmed her nerves slightly, establishing the trust that had begun to develop between woman and horse. Good, Cole praised. Now, I'm going to stand on her other side and hold her steady. When you feel ready, you can put your foot in the stirrup and stand there without swinging your leg over, just to get the feeling of weight in the stirrup. He moved into position, keeping one hand on Daisy's bridle and the other on her back. The mare stood perfectly still, as though understanding the importance of the moment. Catherine took a deep breath, remembering the exercises that had helped her regain her strength after her accident. One movement at a time. No rushing. Complete control. She placed her left foot in the stirrup, gripping the saddle with both hands. The position was achingly familiar, a muscle memory from years of riding before her accident. For a moment, she remained frozen, waiting for the panic to overwhelm her. "You're doing beautifully," Cole said softly. "Take your time." Gradually, Catherine put some weight on her foot, rising slightly off the ground. Daisy remained motionless, her only reaction a slight swivel of her ears. "I can't believe I'm doing this," Catherine whispered, amazed at her own courage. "I can," Cole replied simply. "I've never seen someone face their fears with such grace." The compliment gave Catherine a surge of confidence. Before she could reconsider, she pushed herself upward and swung her right leg over Daisy's back, settling gently into the saddle. The world seemed to stop. Catherine sat rigid, waiting for the terror to consume her. But as Daisy stood calmly beneath her, as Cole's steady hand remained on the bridle, the expected panic subsided into a manageable anxiety. "You're riding," Cole said, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "Catherine, you're on horseback." She couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. 3 years of fear, 3 years of avoiding even the sight of horses, and now here she sat astride a gentle mare with the early morning sun warming her face and Cole Zachariah looking at her as though she'd performed a miracle. "Would you like to take a few steps?" he asked gently. "Just around the corral, I'll hold her the whole time." Catherine nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole clicked his tongue softly, and Daisy began to walk forward at the slowest possible pace. Each step jolted Catherine slightly, bringing back memories of countless rides in her youth. But these memories were of freedom and joy, not of falling and pain. They completed a full circuit of the corral before Catherine indicated she was ready to dismount. Cole helped her down, his hands steady at her waist as her feet touched solid ground again. "How do you feel?" he asked, concern evident in his eyes. Catherine realized she was trembling, but not from fear. "Alive," she whispered. "I feel alive." Without thinking, she threw her arms around Cole's neck, embracing him with all the gratitude and emotion swelling in her chest. He froze momentarily in surprise, then his arms came around her, strong and secure. "Thank you," Catherine murmured against his shoulder. "Thank you for believing I could do this when I didn't believe it myself." Cole's hand came up to stroke her hair, a touch so gentle it brought tears to her eyes. "The courage was all yours," he said softly. "I just provided the opportunity." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet corral with Daisy watching placidly nearby. Catherine knew she should step away, that their embrace had already lasted far longer than propriety allowed, but she couldn't bring herself to break the connection. Finally, Cole eased back slightly, though his hands remained at her waist. "Catherine," he began, his voice rough with emotion, Before he could continue, the sound of approaching footsteps made them spring apart. Sarah Miller appeared at the corral fence, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, though her knowing smile suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "But there's a situation at the mine. Hank sent a messenger to the hotel, and Mrs. Peterson told me you might be here." Catherine straightened her skirt, trying to compose herself. "What kind of situation?" "The sheriff is there with George Harrington. Something about a boundary dispute." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Hank says you should come right away." Cole's face hardened. "Harrington doesn't waste time. I'll saddle my horse." "No," Catherine said firmly. "You're still recovering. The doctor said no riding for another week." She turned to Sarah. "Is there a wagon available?" "Already waiting," Sarah confirmed. "I thought you might need it." Catherine nodded gratefully, then turned back to Cole. "Will you come with me? I could use your expertise in this dispute." "Of course." His expression softened. "But Catherine, you did something remarkable today. Don't let Harrington's schemes overshadow that." As they walked toward the waiting wagon, Catherine felt stronger than she had in years. She had faced her greatest fear and begun to overcome it. Whatever Harrington was plotting, she would face that too with Cole beside her. The journey to the Silver Spur seemed faster than previous trips, perhaps because Catherine was preoccupied with planning her response to Harrington's latest maneuver. By the time they arrived, she had a strategy in mind. At the mine entrance, they found a tense standoff. Hank Davis and several miners stood on one side, while Sheriff Tanner, a portly man with an impressive mustache, stood beside George Harrington, and a well-dressed man Catherine didn't recognize. "Ah, Miss James," Harrington called as she descended from the wagon. "So good of you to join us. We were just discussing the unfortunate confusion regarding the eastern boundary of your claim." Catherine approached with deliberate calm, Cole a reassuring presence at her shoulder. "There is no confusion, Mr. Harrington. The boundary was properly surveyed and registered when my father established the claim." "Actually," the unknown man interjected, "I'm afraid there is a discrepancy." He extended a roll of papers. "I'm Edward Fenton, county surveyor. Mr. Harrington hired me to verify some measurements, and I discovered that the original survey contained an error." Catherine accepted the documents, unrolling them to reveal a detailed map of the Silver Spur claim with annotations indicating a proposed boundary adjustment one that would place the richest part of the new silver vein on Harrington's adjacent property. "This is preposterous," Cole stated flatly. "John James had the boundaries surveyed twice to ensure accuracy." "By whom?" Fenton challenged. "Because the official records show only one survey, conducted by Thomas Whitfield in 1875, and Whitfield was later discovered to have been falsifying measurements in several claims." Sheriff Tanner cleared his throat. "I'm not taking sides here, Miss James, but if there's a legitimate dispute about boundaries, it needs to be resolved legally before any mining continues in the contested area." Catherine studied the surveyor's map carefully, noting the subtle adjustments that would so conveniently benefit Harrington. "Mr. Fenton," she said finally, "are you aware that my father commissioned a second survey from the Denver Mining Authority in 1877? Their findings confirmed the original boundaries." Fenton blinked in surprise. I wasn't informed of a second survey." "I'm not surprised," Catherine replied coolly. "Mr. Harrington likely preferred you remain ignorant of that fact." She turned to the sheriff. "The documentation is in Mr. Harrison's office in town. If you'd like to examine it, I'd be happy to provide access." Harrington's confident smile faltered slightly. "Even if such a survey exists, it doesn't change the fact that Whitfield's original measurements were suspect." The matter will require legal resolution. Indeed it will, Catherine agreed pleasantly. And until that resolution occurs, I believe standard mining law dictates that the current registered claim holder maintains operational rights. Isn't that correct, Sheriff? Sheriff Tanner tugged at his mustache uncomfortably. That's the general practice, yes. Excellent, Catherine said briskly. Then the Silver Spur will resume operations as planned tomorrow morning. If you wish to pursue your boundary claim, Mr. Harrington, you're welcome to do so through the proper legal channels. She turned to Hank. Mr. Davis, please ensure the men are ready for the morning shift. Harrington's face darkened with anger. This isn't over, Miss James. On that point we agree completely, Catherine replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Good day, gentlemen. She turned and walked back toward the cabin, her heart pounding but her expression composed. Cole followed, waiting until they were out of earshot before speaking. That was impressive, he said quietly. You handled Harrington like a seasoned mine owner. Catherine exhaled shakily. I was terrified the entire time, but I couldn't let him see that. Fear can be useful when it doesn't control you, Cole observed. Makes you sharper, more focused. He smiled. You're learning that lesson in more ways than one today. Inside the cabin, Catherine sank into a chair, the tension of the confrontation finally catching up with her. Will he give up now? Cole shook his head. Not Harrington. He'll find another angle. But he's on notice that you're not an easy target. He sat across from her, his expression serious. Catherine, what you said about the second survey was a bluff, she admitted. I have no idea if my father commissioned another survey. But it seemed logical that he would have, given the value of the claim. Cole laughed, the sound warm and appreciative. John would have been proud. That's exactly the kind of bold move he would have made. His expression sobered. But we should find out if that second survey actually exists. Harrison might know. I'll ask him tomorrow. Catherine leaned back, suddenly aware of how much had happened in one morning. I rode a horse today, she said wonderingly, and faced down George Harrington. You're a remarkable woman, Catherine James. Cole's voice was soft with admiration. Courageous in ways that have nothing to do with facing physical danger. The intensity in his gaze made Catherine's breath catch. Something had shifted between them in the corral that morning, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since her arrival in Monticello. Before Sarah's interruption, Cole had been about to speak words that might have changed everything. Cole, she began hesitantly, this morning before Sarah arrived. A knock at the cabin door interrupted her. Hank Davis entered, his weathered face apologetic. Sorry to disturb you, Miss James, but the men would like to know if you have any specific instructions for tomorrow. The moment broken, Catherine turned her attention to practical matters. The rest of the afternoon was consumed with preparations for reopening the mine, reviewing work assignments, checking equipment, and discussing safety procedures with Hank and the returning miners. By the time Catherine and Cole began the journey back to town, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. They traveled in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As they approached Monticello, Cole finally spoke. You should be proud of yourself today. Not many people face their greatest fears before breakfast and their greatest enemy before lunch. Catherine smiled at his phrasing. I had help with both. You'll ride again tomorrow. There was a careful neutrality in his voice, as though he feared pressing too hard. Yes, Catherine decided. Perhaps a little longer this time. She hesitated. Cole, about what happened this morning. You don't need to say anything, he interrupted gently. I understand the difference in our positions. You're a mine owner from a respected Philadelphia family. I'm just a cowboy who's done a bit of everything to survive. He shrugged, a gesture that seemed designed to appear casual though his eyes betrayed deeper emotion. "I'm grateful for your friendship. That's enough." But it wasn't enough not for Catherine, who had spent her life conforming to others' expectations, suppressing her own desires for propriety's sake. The woman who had ridden Daisy that morning, who had faced down George Harrington without flinching, was no longer willing to let fear of any kind dictate her choices. "It's not enough for me," she said quietly but firmly. "Cole, what I feel for you goes beyond friendship. I think you know that." The wagon slowed as Cole turned to look at her, hope and uncertainty mingling in his expression. "Catherine, I don't want you to feel obligated because I've helped you. This has nothing to do with obligation," she interrupted. "It's about who you are, your integrity, your patience, your strength." "I've never met anyone like you." She took a deep breath. "I'm falling in love with you, Cole Zachariah. That terrifies me more than any horse ever could, but it's the truth." For a long moment, Cole stared at her in stunned silence. Then, with deliberate care, he set the brake on the wagon and turned fully toward her. "I've been in love with you since the day you refused to let your fear stop you from coming to the mine," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "Everything since then, watching you face down Harrington, seeing you connect with the miners, helping you overcome your fear of horses has only deepened those feelings." He reached out to touch her cheek gently. "But Catherine, loving me means accepting this life. Monticello isn't Philadelphia. It's rough and primitive and sometimes dangerous." "I know," she whispered. "And for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere, not because of my family name or my education, but because of what I can contribute, what I can build." She leaned into his touch. "My father found his purpose here. I think I'm finding mine too." Cole's eyes searched hers as though looking for any doubt or hesitation. Finding none, he leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw. Instead, Catherine closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss began gently, a tentative exploration, but quickly deepened as years of propriety gave way to genuine passion. Cole's arms came around her, drawing her closer despite the awkward positioning on the wagon seat. Catherine's hands found their way to his shoulders, then his hair, reveling in the freedom to touch him as she'd longed to do when they finally broke apart. Both breathing heavily, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure about this? About us?" "More sure than I've been about anything," Catherine replied with a smile. "Though I'm not entirely certain what this entails in Monticello. In Philadelphia, a declaration like mine would be followed by a formal courtship, with chaperoned visits and parental approval." Cole laughed, the sound rich with happiness. "We do things a bit differently here, but I promise you this, Catherine James, I'll court you properly, with all the respect you deserve." He brushed another light kiss across her lips. "Even if properly means teaching you to ride and helping you run a silver mine." As they continued toward town, hands clasped between them on the wagon seat, Catherine felt a profound sense of rightness. The path ahead would not be easy. Harrington remained a threat. The mine required her attention, and her mother would undoubtedly be scandalized by her decision to remain in Monticello. But for the first time in her life, Catherine was following her own heart rather than others' expectations. The next morning dawned clear and cool, with a hint of frost sparkling on the grass around the corral. Catherine arrived to find Cole already there with Daisy, but also with another horse, a sleek bay gelding with intelligent eyes. "Good morning," Cole greeted, his smile warming her more effectively than the rising sun. "I thought today we might try something new." Catherine approached Daisy first, greeting the mare with newfound confidence. "Another horse?" she questioned, eyeing the bay with only a hint of her former anxiety. "This is Thunder," Cole introduced. "Don't let the name fool you. He's gentle as Daisy, but with a bit more energy. I thought you might ride Daisy again while I ride alongside on Thunder." "Just around the corral at first, but eventually." He gestured toward the open country beyond the town. "There's a beautiful meadow about a mile away, perfect place for a picnic breakfast." The suggestion both thrilled and terrified Catherine. Riding outside the safety of the corral represented a significant step. "Do you think I'm ready for that?" "I think you're ready to try," Cole replied. "And I'll be right beside you the whole time." With his encouragement, Catherine mounted Daisy with far more confidence than the previous day. The familiar motion of sitting in a saddle, once so natural to her, was gradually returning. As Cole swung up onto Thunder's back, she felt a flutter of admiration for his easy grace. They circled the corral several times, with Cole offering gentle instructions on how to hold the reins, how to use her knees to guide Daisy's movements. The old mare responded willingly, seeming pleased to have a rider who treated her with such careful respect. "Ready to try the gait?" Cole asked after Catherine had relaxed noticeably into the rhythm of riding. She nodded, her heart beating faster but no longer with paralyzing fear. "I think so." Cole dismounted to open the corral gate, then remounted Thunder and moved alongside Catherine. "We'll take it slow," he promised. "Just walk out, make a small circle, and come back if you feel uncomfortable." As Daisy carried her through the gate and onto the open ground beyond, Catherine felt a momentous shift within herself. For 3 years, she had allowed her fall to define her relationship with horses, to rob her of an activity that had once brought joy. Now, with the gentle mare beneath her and Cole riding supportively beside her, she was reclaiming that part of herself. "You're doing wonderfully," Cole encouraged as they made a wide circle away from the corral. "How does it feel?" "Freeing," Catherine admitted. "I'd forgotten how it feels to move this way, to cover ground in partnership with an animal." Cole's smile was radiant. "Ready to try that meadow?" "We can turn back anytime you want." The path to the meadow required crossing a shallow stream and navigating a gentle slope, minor obstacles for experienced riders, but significant challenges for someone relearning trust. Catherine hesitated at the stream's edge, momentarily seized by visions of Daisy stumbling or balking. "I'll go first," Cole offered, guiding Thunder into the water. "Just give her loose rein. She knows where to place her feet." Taking a deep breath, Catherine followed his example. Daisy stepped confidently into the stream, water splashing lightly around her fetlocks as she picked her way across. Before Catherine could dwell on her anxiety, they were on the other side, continuing up the gentle slope. The meadow beyond was exactly as Cole had described, a wide expanse of grass dotted with late-blooming wildflowers, surrounded by aspen trees beginning to turn golden with autumn's approach. He led her to a flat rock at the edge of the clearing, perfect for their impromptu picnic. As they dismounted and Cole spread a blanket over the rock, Catherine realized how far they had traveled, not just in physical distance, but in her journey away from fear. "I never imagined I would do this again," she confessed as they settled on the blanket, the horses grazing peacefully nearby. "After my accident, the doctors said I might walk with a limp forever. Riding seemed an impossible dream." Cole unwrapped the bread, cheese, and apples he had brought. "Yet here you are," he said simply. "A brave woman who faces her fears one day at a time." "With help," Catherine added, covering his hand with hers. "I couldn't have done this alone." "We all need help sometimes," Cole agreed, turning his hand to lace his fingers through hers. "That's what I love about this country. People stand together, support each other through hardships. It's how we survive." The casual use of love sent a pleasant warmth through Catherine's chest. As they ate their simple breakfast in the morning sunshine, she found herself imagining a future here running the Silver Spur, building something meaningful, waking each day to this magnificent landscape and to Cole's steady presence. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That I never expected to find happiness in Monticello," Catherine replied honestly. "I came here to sell my inheritance and leave as quickly as possible. Now I can't imagine going back to Philadelphia." Cole's expression turned serious. "Your mother," he said. "You mentioned she depends on you." The reminder of her responsibilities in the East cast a shadow over the perfect morning. "Yes," Catherine acknowledged. "She's comfortable for now with what I send from my teaching salary, but without that regular income." "The mine will provide," Cole assured her. "Once production resumes fully, you can send her an allowance far more generous than your teaching salary provided." He hesitated. Would she consider coming west? Catherine tried to imagine her mother with her formal dinner parties and social calls, her rigid adherence to Philadelphia propriety in Monticello's rough-edged environment. The image was so incongruous it almost made her laugh. "No," she said finally. "Mother would never adapt to life here. But perhaps I could convince her to live with my aunt in Boston. They've always been close, and Aunt Margaret has a lovely home with room for a companion." Cole nodded, understanding the complexities of family obligations. "You'll need to return east eventually to settle your affairs." "Yes," Catherine agreed, "but not yet. Not until the Silver Spur is operating smoothly and Harrington's threats are neutralized." She squeezed his hand. "Not until we've had time to understand what's growing between us." "I already understand it," Cole said softly. "I love you, Catherine. I know it's fast and probably improper by Eastern standards, but life moves differently here. When you find something precious, you don't waste time pretending otherwise." The simple declaration, spoken in the morning sunlight with mountains rising majestically around them, touched Catherine's heart more deeply than any flowery profession could have done. "I love you too," she replied, the words coming easily now that they had been acknowledged. "And I don't care about Eastern standards anymore. I care about building a life that matters, with people who matter." Cole leaned forward to kiss her, a gentle affirmation of feelings too significant for words alone. As they packed up their picnic and remounted for the return journey, Catherine felt a newfound confidence not just in her ability to ride, but in the path she had chosen for her life. Over the following weeks, Catherine divided her time between overseeing the reopening of the Silver Spur and continuing her riding lessons with Cole. The mine resumed operations with Hank Davis supervising the day-to-day work, while Catherine focused on administrative tasks and financial planning. Production from the new silver vein proved even more promising than initial assessments had suggested, providing a steady income that she could share with her mother. Her daily rides with Cole expanded from short excursions around town to longer journeys exploring the beautiful countryside surrounding Monticello. With each ride, her confidence grew, until the day Cole suggested she try a different horse. "Daisy's been wonderful," he explained, "but you're ready for a more responsive mount." The idea still triggered anxiety, but Catherine nodded. "I trust your judgment." The horse Cole introduced, a chestnut mare named Penny, was younger and more spirited than Daisy, but still gentle and well-trained. Their first ride together was tense, with Catherine hyper-aware of Penny's every movement. But by the end of the week, they had developed a partnership almost as comfortable as the one she had formed with Daisy. "You're a natural," Cole praised as they returned from a particularly long ride. "Your form is excellent. I had good training as a girl, Catherine admitted. Before the accident, I rode almost daily. Cole helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. And now you're riding daily again. The circle is complete. Their courtship progressed alongside Catherine's renewed confidence with horses. Cole joined her for dinner each evening at the hotel, took her to church services on Sundays, and accompanied her on business visits to the mine. Town gossip speculated freely about their relationship, but Catherine found she cared little for conventional propriety anymore. Monticello's standards were different. People were judged by their actions and integrity, not by rigid social rules. The only cloud in their happiness was George Harrington's continued efforts to undermine the Silver Spur. Though his boundary dispute had been resolved in Catherine's favor when Mr. Harrison produced documentation of the second survey, which, to Catherine's relief, actually existed, Harrington found other avenues of attack. He attempted to hire away key miners with promises of higher wages, spread rumors about unsafe conditions at the Silver Spur, and even briefly diverted the creek that supplied water to the mine operations. Each attack was met with determined resistance from Catherine, Cole, and the loyal workers who respected John James's legacy. But the constant vigilance was wearing, and Catherine knew Harrington wouldn't stop until he either obtained the Silver Spur or was convinced it was impossible to do so. The situation came to a head one crisp October morning when Catherine arrived at the mine to find operations halted, and the miners gathered in anxious discussion outside the main entrance. "What's happened?" she asked Hank as she dismounted from Penny, now comfortable enough to ride to the mine alone when Cole was occupied elsewhere. "Supply wagon was stopped on the way up," Hank explained grimly. "Driver says armed men turned him back, claimed there was a rock slide blocking the road. But Jenkins rode up the back trail and says there's no slide. Someone's deliberately blocking access." "Harrington," Catherine said flatly. Hank nodded. "Likely so, though he'll deny involvement. Without those supplies, we can't continue operations safely. We're particularly low on timber for supporting new tunnels." Catherine considered her options. Direct confrontation had failed to deter Harrington previously. Legal remedies moved too slowly to address immediate threats. What she needed was leverage, something that would make Harrington reconsider his campaign against the Silver Spur. "Where's Cole?" she asked. "Rode into town early to collect the payroll from the bank," Hank replied. "Should be back by noon." Catherine made her decision. "I need to speak with Sheriff Tanner, and then I think it's time I had a direct conversation with George Harrington." She remounted Penny, the action now smooth and confident after weeks of practice. "Keep the men here," she instructed Hank. "If Cole returns before I do, tell him I've gone to resolve the supply issue." The ride to town was swift, with Catherine guiding Penny at a pace that would have terrified her just a month earlier. She found Sheriff Tanner at his office, reluctantly agreeing to investigate the blocked road but making no promises about immediate action. "Harrington has powerful friends in the county government," he admitted uncomfortably. "I'll do what I can, but don't expect quick results." Frustrated but not surprised, Catherine continued to her next destination, the imposing two-story house on the edge of town where George Harrington maintained his residence when in Monticello. The maid who answered the door seemed startled by Catherine's request for an immediate meeting, but led her to a well-appointed study where Harrington sat at a massive desk. "Miss James," he greeted, not bothering to rise. "This is an unexpected pleasure. What brings you to my home?" Catherine remained standing, declining his belated gesture toward a chair. "You know precisely why I'm here, Mr. Harrington. Your men are blocking the supply road to the Silver Spur." Harrington's smile was cold. A serious accusation. Do you have proof of these alleged actions? We both know proof is irrelevant, Catherine replied. This is merely your latest attempt to force me to sell, but I've come to inform you that these tactics will no longer be effective. Indeed. Harrington leaned back in his chair, studying her with calculating eyes. And why is that, Miss James? Catherine met his gaze steadily. Because as of this morning, I've arranged for the Denver Mining Consortium to purchase a 25% interest in the Silver Spur. The lie for it was a complete fabrication hit its mark. Harrington's confident expression faltered. The consortium was one of the largest and most powerful mining operations in the West, with political connections that far outstripped Harrington's local influence. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "The papers are being drawn up by Mr. Harrison as we speak," Catherine continued smoothly. "The consortium has expressed interest in expanding their holdings in this region for some time. They were quite eager to form a partnership once they reviewed our production reports." Harrington's jaw tightened. "Why tell me this? Professional courtesy," Catherine replied with a pleasant smile. "And to suggest that any further interference with Silver Spur operations would be unwise. The consortium employs very effective security measures for their investments. Their representatives will arrive next week to inspect the property." It was a gamble if Harrington investigated immediately. He might discover the deception before Catherine could make it a reality. But she was counting on his caution outweighing his skepticism, at least temporarily. "I see," Harrington said finally. "Well, Miss James, it seems you've been busy. Congratulations on securing such prestigious partners." His tone made the words anything but congratulatory. "I trust your road will be clear by this afternoon." "How kind of you to address that coincidental issue," Catherine replied, maintaining her composure despite the surge of triumph she felt. "Good day, Mr. Harrington." She left his house with her head high, aware that she had won this round but equally certain that the war was far from over. Now she needed to contact the Denver Mining Consortium immediately, an attempt to transform her bluff into reality. Catherine rode directly to the telegraph office, where she composed a message to the consortium's headquarters, proposing a partnership investment. It was a long shot. Such arrangements typically required months of negotiation, but she had to try. As she exited the telegraph office, she spotted Cole riding toward her, his expression tight with concern. He dismounted quickly, reaching her in long strides. "Hank told me what happened," he said without preamble. "Where have you been? I was worried sick." "I'm fine," Catherine assured him, touched by his concern. "I went to see Harrington." Cole's eyes widened. "Alone, Catherine, that was reckless. The man's dangerous." "Not in his own home with witnesses present," she countered. "And I needed to address the situation directly." She explained her bluff about the consortium partnership and the telegram she had just sent. Cole ran a hand through his hair in a gesture of mingled admiration and exasperation. "It might work temporarily, but when Harrington discovers it's not true, by then, it might be," Catherine said hopefully. "The consortium has expressed interest in expanding into this region before. My father mentioned it in some of his correspondence I found at the cabin." Cole studied her face, his initial alarm fading into reluctant respect. "You're becoming quite the mine owner, Catherine James." A smile tugged at his lips. "And quite the rider. There was a time not long ago when you couldn't look at a horse without going pale." Catherine glanced at Penny, who stood patiently nearby. "I had an excellent teacher," she said softly. "Someone who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Cole's expression softened. "I always believed in you. From the moment you stepped down from that stagecoach, terrified but determined. "I knew you were something special." He reached out to touch her cheek gently. "I just didn't know how completely you would change my life." The tenderness in his voice made Catherine's heart swell. "Cole," she began, then hesitated, suddenly nervous about the decision she had made during her ride to town. "There's something I want to ask you." His eyebrows rose questioningly. "Will you marry me?" The words tumbled out before she could reconsider, bold and unconventional like everything about her life since coming to Monticello. Cole stared at her, momentarily speechless. Then a slow smile spread across his face, lighting his eyes with a joy that took Catherine's breath away. "I believe I'm supposed to be the one asking that question," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Perhaps in Philadelphia," Catherine replied. "But as you once told me, we do things differently here." She took his hand, suddenly uncertain. "Unless you'd prefer to wait." "I know it hasn't been very long." Cole silenced her with a kiss, right there on the main street of Monticello with half the town likely watching. When he pulled away, his expression was one of absolute certainty. "Yes," he said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Catherine James." "Tomorrow, if you're willing," she laughed, giddy with happiness despite the challenges still facing them. "Perhaps not quite that soon. I should at least write to my mother first. And there's the matter of Harrington and the mine partnership." "Details," Cole dismissed with another quick kiss. "The important thing is that we'll face them together." He stepped back, suddenly serious. "Are you certain, Catherine? Marriage to me means committing to this life, to Monticello. It's not the society existence you were raised for." "I've never been more certain of anything," Catherine assured him. "My life in Philadelphia feels like a distant memory now, something I observed rather than lived. Here, with you, with the mine, I feel fully alive for the first time." Their engagement announcement that evening at the hotel dining room caused a flurry of congratulations and knowing smiles. Sarah Miller was particularly delighted, claiming credit for having recognized their compatibility from the start. Mrs. Peterson immediately began discussing wedding preparations, while Mr. Harrison offered to draw up the necessary legal documents to protect Catherine's ownership of the silver spur. Not that Cole would ever take advantage, the lawyer clarified hastily when Cole raised an eyebrow. "But proper paperwork prevents future complications." "I agree completely," Cole said, surprising those who expected a defensive reaction. "Catherine has worked too hard to establish the silver spur as a viable operation. Its ownership should remain clearly in her name." His easy acceptance of Catherine's independent status as a business owner only deepened her love for him. In Philadelphia, even the most progressive men expected to assume control of their wives' property upon marriage. Cole's respect for her capabilities, and her right to maintain her own business affairs, was yet another affirmation that she had found a true partner. The next day brought unexpected news. A telegram from the Denver Mining Consortium expressing interest in her partnership proposal and indicating they would send a representative the following week. Catherine's bluff had apparently struck a genuine chord with the consortium's business development strategy. "This changes everything," Cole observed as they rode together to the mine, where operations had resumed after the mysterious clearing of the supply road. With the consortium as partners, Harrington wouldn't dare interfere further. "It would only be a minority partnership," Catherine clarified. "I have no intention of surrendering control of the silver spur. But their investment would allow us to expand operations, improve safety measures, and perhaps even build a small processing facility on site." Cole's smile was proud. "Listen to you talking like a mining executive. Your father would be amazed." "And pleased, I hope," Catherine added softly. I wish he could see what's becoming of his dream. He can, Cole said with quiet certainty. And I've no doubt he's proud of the woman his daughter has become. The consortium representative, a brisk, businesslike woman named Eleanor Blackwood, who specialized in assessing potential investments, arrived exactly as promised. Her thorough inspection of the Silver Spur operations, detailed questioning of workers, and meticulous review of financial records impressed Catherine deeply. "Your father built a solid operation," Miss Blackwood concluded after 3 days of evaluation. "And you've maintained his standards admirably. The consortium would be pleased to proceed with the partnership as outlined in your proposal." The formal agreement was signed in Mr. Harrison's office a week later, with George Harrington conspicuously absent from town during the proceedings. The investment provided immediate capital for improvements Catherine had been planning, while the consortium's reputation effectively shielded the Silver Spur from further interference. With the mine's future secured, Catherine turned her attention to personal matters. A lengthy letter to her mother explained her decision to remain in Monticello permanently, her engagement to Cole, and her proposal that Mrs. James consider relocating to Aunt Margaret's home in Boston. The response, when it finally arrived after weeks of anxious waiting, was predictably dismayed but ultimately resigned. "Mother will adjust," Catherine told Cole as they sat together on the porch of the cabin, which had become their favorite retreat from town. "Especially once the mine's profits provide her with a more comfortable lifestyle than my teaching salary ever could." Cole nodded, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sunset paint the mountains. "And our wedding? Will she come west for that?" Catherine sighed. "I've invited her, of course, but her letter suggests the journey would be too taxing in her delicate state of health, which means she disapproves but won't openly forbid the match." She turned to face him. "Does that bother you, that my family won't be present?" "The only approval I need is yours," Cole assured her. "Besides, we'll make our own family here." The simple statement, offered without pressure or expectation, filled Catherine with a warm certainty. She could imagine children in this place, sturdy, independent young people raised amidst the beauty of the mountains, taught to respect both nature's power and human resilience. "Yes," she agreed softly. "Yes, we will." Their wedding took place on a crisp November morning, with golden aspen leaves providing a natural decoration that outshone any florist's arrangements. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, held in Monticello's small church with Reverend Johnson officiating. Sarah Miller served as Catherine's attendant, while Hank Davis stood proudly as Cole's best man. Catherine wore a simple dress of ivory silk ordered from Denver, with a lace veil that had belonged to Mrs. Peterson's daughter. Cole looked uncommonly formal in a new black suit, though he drew the line at surrendering his familiar boots for city shoes. "Some concessions to civilization are a step too far," he had declared when Catherine suggested it, making her laugh at his rare stubbornness. The surprise of the day came when Sheriff Tanner appeared at the church door just before the ceremony, accompanied by a distinguished older gentleman who introduced himself as Judge William Harrison, the lawyer's brother and a circuit court judge. "Hope you don't mind my attendance," the judge said, shaking Cole's hand warmly. "I was passing through on my circuit and heard the news. Couldn't miss seeing young Zachariah finally settle down with a worthy woman." Later, Catherine would learn that the judge had been instrumental in Cole's life, offering guidance and occasionally legal assistance when Cole's youthful impetuosity had led to troubles. His presence at their wedding represented a kind of paternal blessing that moved Cole deeply. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. As they exchanged vows, Catherine found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment, from the terrified woman who couldn't look at a horse without panic, to the confident mine owner and bride who had ridden to her own wedding on a spirited mare. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Johnson declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Cole's kiss was tender but thorough, drawing cheers and a few good-natured whistles from the assembled townspeople. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors, Catherine felt a profound sense of belonging. This place, so foreign and frightening when she had first arrived, had become home in every meaningful sense of the word. The celebration continued at the hotel, where Mrs. Peterson had outdone herself with a feast that would have impressed even Philadelphia society. Music, dancing, and generous quantities of champagne, imported at great expense for the occasion, kept the festivities going well into the evening. As the party continued, Cole drew Catherine outside for a moment of quiet. The night was clear, stars blazing in the mountain sky with an intensity never visible in Philadelphia's gas-lit streets. "Happy?" he asked simply, his arms around her waist. Catherine leaned back against his chest, gazing up at the constellations. "Completely. Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible." Cole's voice was rough with emotion. "When you first came to town, I never imagined we'd end up here." "Nor did I," Catherine admitted. "I was so focused on escaping from Monticello, from horses, from my father's legacy. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Cole tightened his embrace. "There's something I want to show you, a wedding gift of sorts." "Now?" Catherine questioned, turning in his arms. "In the middle of our reception. They'll hardly notice we're gone for a bit," Cole assured her with a mischievous smile. "Besides, I've waited weeks for the right moment." Intrigued, Catherine allowed him to lead her to where two horses waited, already saddled. Penny nickered a greeting, while Cole's mount, a powerful black gelding named Shadow, stood patiently beside her. "A nighttime ride?" Catherine questioned, excitement mingling with a vestige of her old caution. Though she rode daily now, she had not yet attempted riding after dark. "A short one," Cole promised. "Just to the rise beyond town. Trust me." "With my life," Catherine replied simply. Mounting Penny with practiced ease, they rode at a walk through the quiet streets of Monticello, then picked up the pace as they reached the open country beyond. The moon provided ample light to see the trail, and Catherine found herself enjoying the novel sensations of night riding, the cooler air, the heightened sounds of nocturnal creatures, the intimate feeling of being alone with Cole in the vast landscape. At the top of a gentle rise overlooking the town, Cole dismounted and helped Catherine down, though she needed far less assistance than in those early days of relearning to ride. He tied the horses loosely to a stunted pine, then took Catherine's hand and led her to a specific spot with a commanding view of the valley below. "This is it," he announced, his voice tinged with nervous anticipation. "Your wedding gift." Catherine looked around, puzzled. "The view." "The land," Cole clarified. 20 acres stretching from here down to that creek." He pointed to a silver ribbon visible in the moonlight. "I purchased it last month from the county land office." "You bought land?" Catherine was genuinely surprised. Cole had never expressed interest in property ownership before. "For our home," he explained. "If you approve, of course. The cabin at the mine is functional, but it's not really ours. It will always be part of the Silver Spur operations. This would be just for us, our own ranch, separate from the mining business." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched Catherine deeply. Cole had recognized her unspoken desire for a personal space distinct from her role as mine owner, a place where she could be simply Catherine, not John James's daughter or the Silver Spur's proprietor. "It's perfect," she whispered, envisioning the home they could build here with views of both the mountains and the town. Absolutely perfect. Cole's relief was palpable. I've drawn up some plans for a house. Nothing fancy, but solid with plenty of room for a family someday. He hesitated, suddenly uncertain. If that's what you want, of course. Catherine turned to face him, her heart full to bursting with love for this man who consistently thought of her happiness, her needs, her dreams. It's exactly what I want, she assured him. A home, a family, a life with you. Their kiss beneath the star-filled sky sealed the promise of that shared future. When they finally returned to their wedding celebration, it was with the private joy of plans already taking shape between them. The years that followed brought challenges and triumphs in equal measure. The Silver Spur prospered under Catherine's management, becoming one of the most productive mines in the region. The partnership with the Denver Mining Consortium expanded to include educational initiatives for miners' children and improved safety standards that were eventually adopted throughout the territory. George Harrington made one final attempt to undermine the Silver Spur's operations, initiating a lawsuit over water rights that dragged through the courts for nearly a year. But with the consortium's legal team supporting her case, Catherine ultimately prevailed. Harrington eventually sold his mining interests and moved to California, much to the relief of the Monticello community. Cole and Catherine's home, built on the land he had purchased as a wedding gift, became known for its hospitality and stunning views. Designed with both beauty and practicality in mind, the ranch house featured wide porches, large windows to capture the mountain vistas, and comfortable rooms furnished with a blend of Eastern refinement and Western durability. Their first child, a son they named John, after Catherine's father arrived a year after their wedding. He was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Elizabeth, who inherited her mother's determination and her father's easy way with horses. Both children grew up riding almost before they could walk, dividing their time between the ranch and the mine as they absorbed the lessons of their parents' diverse experiences. Mrs. James never did visit Monticello, maintaining that the journey was too arduous for a woman of her years and sensibilities. But she thrived in Boston with Aunt Margaret, enjoying the cultural advantages of city life while benefiting from the generous allowance Catherine provided from the mine's profits. Her letters, initially stiff with disapproval, gradually warmed as she recognized her daughter's happiness and success. Catherine continued riding daily, eventually becoming known as one of the finest horsewomen in the county. The fear that had once paralyzed her transformed into a deep respect for horses' power and intelligence, a respect she instilled in her children, along with proper safety precautions. Respect the animal, trust the training, know your limits, became her mantra as she taught young John and Elizabeth to ride. Fear is natural, but don't let it control you. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Cole surprised Catherine with a special gift, a beautifully crafted side saddle imported from England. For formal occasions, he explained as she admired the exquisite leather workmanship. Though I still prefer watching you ride astride like a proper Western woman. Catherine laughed, running her hand over the smooth leather. I'll only use it for visits from Eastern investors, she promised. The rest of the time, I'll continue scandalizing proper society by riding like I mean it. The side saddle was rarely used, but Catherine treasured it as a symbol of how far she had come from a woman who trembled at the sight of a horse to one who could appreciate even formal riding equipment as an art form rather than a source of terror. Their 10th anniversary celebration coincided with Monticello's incorporation as a proper town, with an elected mayor, Hank Davis, retired from mining and universally respected. and a town council that included Catherine among its members. The silver boom had transformed the once small settlement into a thriving community with a school, a small hospital, and even a modest opera house where traveling performers occasionally appeared. Did you ever imagine Monticello would become this? Catherine asked Cole as they stood on their porch watching the town's anniversary fireworks display, their children exclaiming in delight at each colorful burst. Cole's arm tightened around her waist. "I imagined possibilities," he replied thoughtfully. "But the reality has exceeded even my most optimistic visions." He turned her gently to face him. "Just as you have, Catherine. Every day with you is better than I dared hope for when I helped a terrified Eastern lady down from that stagecoach." Catherine rose on tiptoe to kiss him, still feeling the same thrill of connection after a decade of marriage. "I was so afraid then," she mused. "Not just of horses, but of everything unknown. I couldn't see past my fear to the life waiting beyond it." "Fear has its purpose," Cole reminded her, echoing words he had spoken many times during their journey together. "It keeps us cautious when caution is warranted. The trick is recognizing when it's time to move past it to take the risk for the reward that follows." As they stood together watching the celebration of both their marriage and their town's progress, Catherine reflected on the wisdom of those words. Her greatest fear had led to her greatest joy, for if she hadn't been forced to confront her terror of horses, she might never have found the courage to embrace the life and love that awaited her in Monticello. "The best rewards," she murmured, leaning against her husband's solid strength with their children gathered close around them, "are always worth the risk."